If you're feeling overwhelmed with the amount of options and different builds and different combo lines that you can do with the fire deck, I think that's fair. I think that's a feeling that a lot of people in the community share at the moment. So don't worry about that. I think it's just going to take some time and we're going to get used to it, right? On another note, we have Voiceless Voice, which is, I think, a little bit more straightforward. So just for context, this is a rework of basically a new archetype that puts old ritual monsters together, which are Soravis, Skull Guardian, and who's the third one even? Saphira. They got some new ritual monsters and some new main deck monsters. So let's just go through it together and see what the lines for this deck do. And I think it's not going to be that difficult for us to get through this one. If you ritual summon exactly one light ritual monster, warrior or dragon, with a card effect that requires the use of monsters, this card can be used as the entire tribute. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is normal or special, it places a Voiceless Voice continuous spell trap from deck into face-up spell and trap zone. And if a light ritual monster, warrior or dragon is special to your field while it's in the graveyard, you can special summon this card. So very simple. On normal or special, this card is going to place a continuous spell or trap, and it can be used as the entire tribute, and it comes back from the graveyard. I think it makes sense if we talk about its targets first. We have Barrier of the Voiceless Voice, which is the most important, I want to say, card of the archetype almost, but together with Low. While you control Low and a light ritual, your opponent monsters can only target rituals for attacks, and they cannot target light monsters with card effects. During the main phase, add a Voiceless Voice card or Skull Guardian ritual monster from your deck to your hand, except Barrier. So this card is just phenomenal. Once per turn, Rhoda, plus targeting protection, plus messing with your opponent's attacking targets. Always going to be playing 3. In case you already have Barrier of the Voiceless Voice, most of the Voiceless Voice lists that I've seen, they do play one copy of the trap card in order to just have a secondary target for Low. And also, I think even if you don't have Barrier and you get Barrier on the first turn, I think the deck has ways to summon out the Low on the opponent's turn to get this trap anyways, because this places face up, right? The continuous trap has 2 effects. You can only activate one of these effects. It's during the main phase. Shuffle a light ritual monster or a ritual spell from hand or grave into the deck. If you do, add to your hand or special summon a Voiceless Voice monster from your deck. Or you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of light rituals you control, destroy both this card and as many of the targeted cards as possible. So this card can either special summon or add, or it can destroy multiple cards your opponent controls. Usually the ratio is you're going to play 3 Low always. Everything revolves around this card. Obviously you're going to play 3 Barrier because the card is insane, and then you play 1 copy of Radiance because you can get it for free off of Low if you already have the Barrier. And I think most lines get to end on the trap anyways. We'll look at the lines in a sec. That's the ratio that you're going to play for sure. The only new ritual monster for now is a new version of Skull Guardian. You can ritual summon this card with Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. This card gains 2050 attack if you control Low, so it goes to a 4100 untargetable thing because of the Barrier. If this card is ritual summoned, it adds a Voiceless Voice monster or a ritual warrior or dragon from deck to hand. When your opponent activates a card or effect while you control Low, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So it's literally on summon, it searches, it's a 4100 towers, and it's an omni negate once per turn while you keep Low on the field. So this card is phenomenal, part of almost any Voiceless Voice end board because it is highly searchable and because it is not a starter card in it itself. I don't think people are playing 3 of this card. The standard that I've seen is 2. Other new card that we have is Saphira. Discard this card, send a ritual spell from deck to grave, then you can add a light ritual monster from deck or grave to your hand. This is a pretty good effect because I believe the ritual spell also has a graveyard effect, and then this also has a graveyard effect. You can banish this card from your grave, ritual summon a light ritual monster from your hand by tributing monsters from your hand or field whose total level equal or exceed the level. You're gonna search Saphira, you're gonna discard it to send the ritual spell, and then you can banish it from the graveyard to ritual summon with her. This is a 3 of. I only have 2 for now, so we're gonna have to use a placeholder for this. I wasn't able to get my hands on 3 of these. Then we have Soravis, the new effect monster version. You can special summon this card by shuffling 2 spells from your hand or grave into the deck, including a ritual spell. You can only special summon it once per turn this way. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, return this card from field to the hand, special summon a light ritual from hand or deck, but shuffle it into the deck during the end phase. This is a one-off that you can access if you already have some of the combo pieces that you were going to search normally, so you just end on it on top. It has some recycling to it as well. I believe this is the last card from Phantom Nightmare for this archetype, is the ritual spell, which is called Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Can be used to ritual summon any light ritual monster, must also tribute, of course, blah blah blah, normal ritual summon stuff. If a face-up light ritual monster you control leaves to the field by an opponent's card effect, you can banish this card from your grave, special summon Soravis, Saphira, or Skull Guardian from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning condition. So I want to say, and we're going to check about that in a second, but I believe you're not going to activate this card on turn 1, because normally I think you ritual summon using Saphira. I think normally you're going to send this to the graveyard from the deck, and then it's just going to sit there and make your board harder to out. And most lists I've seen play 2 of this card. I believe you need it in the deck to send it for Saphira, so that's probably why you don't play 1. The card is decent, but obviously its activation effect is just a regular ritual summon, so nothing too broken about it. And that's all the new stuff you play. Honorable mention, we have Soravis, OG Soravis, which is actually pretty good in the deck. I mean, I've seen it anywhere between 1 and 3 copies. Usually, I think the standard is 2. We all know that this card is like a pseudo hand trap that can stop targeting effects, which can be quite relevant to stop something like Effect Veiler or Impermanence. The cool thing about this card is this deck can actually summon it with the other Soravis. You can tag out into it, and people don't really know that this card actually is solid on the board. Like, for a card that came out like, what, 8 or 9 years ago, this card's actually quite good on the board, because it says, when your opponent would special summon a monster, quick effect, return this card to the hand, negate the special summon, banish that monster or those monsters. That's pretty good. That's like, if your opponent link summons, it kind of works like a Solemn Judgment or a Thunder King Rayo is a better comparison, because you just negate the summon and banish those monsters, and this returns to the hand, which then enables you to use the targeting protection effect, right? Pretty cool. And then there's also the potential to play Odd Eyes Pendulum Graft Dragon, which you can cheat out as well, because it is a light dragon ritual. This negates spell cards, which is pretty good as well. You can't cheat this one out. Oh, this, you can't summon it with Soravis, but you can ritual summon it. Okay, that's probably why they play 0 or 1 copy, because you can't summon it with Soravis. Because I was about to say, if you can summon this with Soravis, it'd be pretty good, but you can't. You're right, you're right. Good point, good point. This thing says it must be ritual summoned or pendulum summoned from your hand, so you have to summon it with the ritual spell if you want to summon it, but you can't do that technically. I think I prefer just playing Soravis and Skull Guardian. I just wanted to mention it for completion's sake. Before we hop into any of the other things that you can play in this deck, because there's a ton of other cards that support the archetype, why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of the things that the deck does, just to understand what the deck is trying to achieve. And obviously, 1-card combo, Low, the Prayer of the Voiceless Voice. Normal summon Low enables you to place a spell and trap, in which case I think you're gonna always place Barrier here. Barrier, I believe, gets you Saphira. You then use Saphira to send prayers from the deck to the graveyard, and it adds a light ritual, which in this case you're gonna search Skull Guardian Protector. You're gonna go Saphira, tribute Low as the entire tribute to summon Skull Guardian. Skull Guardian triggers to add Voiceless Voice monster from deck to hand, or Soravis, because it says Voiceless Voice or Ritual Monster, Warrior, or Dragon. And I believe the Low also comes back, right? Yeah, it does come back. So it's Chainlink 1 Skull Guardian, Chainlink 2 Low. Low comes back, you search Follow Up or Soravis. Let's just say we search Soravis then, okay. And so what do we have from this 1-card combo? An Omni Negate? That's it, right? Oh, no, we're not done. We make Dynamondo. Okay. If this card is special, target a card on the field and a ritual in the grave, shuffle both into the deck. During your opponent's turn, you contribute this card, target a ritual, add it, or special summon it. Oh, I see. The reason why you want to make Dynamondo here is because on the opponent's turn, you use Dynamondo to tag out into the Skull Guardian, which allows you to bring back Low again. And then the reason why this is better than just passing on these immediately is because now Low also places the trap card on the opponent's turn. So the 1-card combo gets you to this position. To be honest, compared to Snake Eyes, right, this is worse. But for 1 card, it's pretty good. We have 1 pop from the trap, 1 Omni Negate, targeting protection, can only attack this. If they find a way to get rid of this thing, you can trigger the spell in the graveyard to float into like a Soravis. Or you can return the Soravis in hand to special the main deck Soravis from the deck. Oh, you can summon the new Soravis, you mean? Yeah, you can use this to shuffle back Soravis from hand or the ritual spell in the graveyard and summon this guy. If you think that's better than pop, you can summon this guy, and then if the opponent activates a card, you can tag out into a Soravis from the deck. Yeah, you can do that. So this card can either turn into a Soravis or it can turn into a pop. This is the essential of the deck, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know how well this deck extends if you have more cards. Like, what happens if I have Barrier and Low already? Like, what's the advantage here? I understand the concept of the deck, but can I do more? You can play around more hand trap. I mean, I get that, right? Like, if I normal summon this and my opponent imperms it, if I have this already, like, it's pretty good. I guess let's mention one other card. let's mention Diviner. Diviner in this deck is pretty cool because the thing you do with Diviner, what you would expect maybe is that you would send like Herald of the Arclight to search your rituals in a ritual deck, because that's what every ritual deck has been doing. In this deck, that's not what you do. The most broken part about Diviner in this deck is the fact that it summons a level 2 or lower fairy from your deck. So what you do with Diviner is you actually have to play this card, which I think is like a soft brick. This is a fairy level 9. During the main phase, if it's in the hand or grave, quick effect, tribute up to 3 fairies, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Then you can apply these effects. These usually don't matter. Like, it's just that you can tribute your Diviner for this thing immediately, which honestly makes it okay to draw if you draw it alongside Diviner, because if you draw it alongside Diviner, you can just Diviner to send Herald, search with Herald, and then tribute Diviner anyways, and it also makes it imperm safe. But drawing it without Diviner I think kind of sucks. You would go Diviner, tribute Trias, and then Trias tributes the Diviner. The Diviner floats into low. Basically, you have the entire standard combo here, but you have an extra body, which I don't know exactly how much you gain from that, to be honest with you. I don't know if you can do anything crazy with that extra body. You end on this, and then you Dynamondo back this brings that back, and then you get... Dude, this deck gets owned by Bystials. No? I feel like Bystials fucked this up. I'm not gonna lie. How bad is it into Droll? You start with low, place Barrier. Barrier searches Saphira. You get Drolled, and you can't use Saphira anymore. It's very decent into Droll. I mean, how? I mean, yeah, I can use it. I don't have to add. I can send this, but then I would need Soravis or Skull Guardian in hand already. I mean, to be fair, right, the deck has a lot of other tools. Like, it's not just one card combos. I guess if you draw multiple cards, you have a better way of playing through Droll and Lockbird, because obviously you have 3 low, 3 barrier, 3 Zafira. You can hard draw the rituals. You have Diviner. My main question is there something I need to look at in terms of a different end board? Or is that the concept behind the deck? Just efficient ways to get to that sort of setup? Because to me, it feels like a Centurion situation where I'm looking at one combo line and I'm almost done with the most important parts of the deck. This is the core package, right? You would play 3 Diviner, 3 low, 3 Saphira, 1 Trias, 1 Soravis, 2 and 2 of the rituals is the standard that I've been seeing. 3 Barrier, 2 Prayers, 1 Radiance. And so that is 7, 11, 15, 21 cards. And I think here comes the strength of the deck, is that it does this stuff relatively efficiently. It's got some good support cards, and the rest can just be non-engine. From what I've seen, popular tech cards for the deck include pre-preparation of rites. Pre-prep is literally just search the field spell plus one of these 2 guys. Obviously, the ritual spell and the ritual monsters aren't like the bread and butter of the deck. I would say this portion is more important. I've seen people cut down on pre-prep in order to be better against roll. I've seen lists that only play 1 or 2, but it's fine still. You can play a Nadir Servant package to like send Herald of the Arclight and go +1 and go Maximus, because the extra deck is very open for the deck. I think you play like 2 Dynamondo, some other situational stuff like Typhon, but like for the most part you have room for a lot. Another card that I've seen people use is Pot of Extravagance, because the main combos of the deck don't draw cards and it doesn't need its extra deck that much, so you can use Extravagance. You can also use Pot of Prosperity. I think all these spell cards in the deck are pretty good, but the more you play, the weaker you get to Droll and Lockbird. The thing that I've seen most people do is they've been playing Pot of Extravagance and some amount of pre-preps. Those seem to be the most consistent ones because they don't require you to play any sort of engine requirements like for Nadir Servant, right? And they just the most simple +1 that you can have. And that would put it up to, I think that's 27 cards. You're gonna have room for like 13 non-engine, which is solid. The main problem for this deck is that I don't really see it going second, because these linear combo lines make it almost impossible to push through boards. Super Poly helps. You can play Super Poly, yeah. So that's what Voiceless Voice does for completion's sake. Extra deck, you play Herald of the Arclight because you don't always want to send Trias with Herald. You play Diviner just in case you need that removal. If you play something like Ultimate Slayer or Nadir Servant, you're going to play stuff like Malong. The deck can make Chaos Angel, so that comes up. Omega is another card for the Dogmatica package. You play usually at least 2 copies of Dynamondo. If you play Extravagance, you might even play 3 because it's probably the most important extra deck card for this deck. And then you might also play multiple copies of these guys. You probably play Typhon. I've seen people play Linkuriboh and Almirage, probably as a way to link off your low and get it into the graveyard so you can summon it back for free later, as well as obviously being able to make SP Little Knight, which I think the deck still plays. Being able to make SP Little Knight with effect to banish, right? And I've seen some people play Azalea. The extra deck is very open for this deck, really. The most important thing is probably Dynamondo and some targets for Herald, and then some good stuff. So that's Voiceless Voice. Compared to how we talked about like Snake Eyes for hours, it's very simple in comparison. Do you think it can really compete with Snake Eye? Define compete. There's gonna be Voiceless Voice decks that top YCSs. I think not many, but it can. It's not going to be close to Snake Eye in terms of top cut representation. No, I don't think so. We're going to try it next week as well. Maybe I have to play it more. Maybe I'm underestimating it. From my perspective, it seems like the main advantage of this deck is that it's solid into Max C, which is, I think, the main reason why it's good in the OCG, because it has good lines under Max C. Like, let's say you go normal summon low, place barrier, barrier grabs Saphira. Saphira goes ahead and dumps the field spell, the Search Guardian, then you go banish Saphira, you get Max Seed here, summon out Skull Guardian, use Skull Guardian to search, bring back low, they get 2 draws from Max C, and then maybe you give them a third, and then you call it a day, and that's not too bad. It's still not great though. It's not gonna be better than Snake Eyes. It can probably like win regionals, it can top YCSs. Low is relatively pricey at the moment because I think people are looking into it because, you know, the fire deck is not something that everyone is willing to afford or able to afford. I mean, how much would this deck be? I guess Chaos Angel, SP, Typhon, you're still looking at an expensive extra deck. 150, 3 Diviners, 60, that's 210. You have an SP, that's 310. Chaos Angel puts you to like 350s. Typhon puts you to 380 plus the rest. Yeah, you're looking over 400, which is still expensive. Not gonna call it a budget option, but it's definitely more budget than Snake Eyes. The main selling point of this deck is not how good it is. I think the main selling point of this deck is that it's relatively simple and easy to pilot. In a world where the fire decks are not only going to be incredibly expensive, but also incredibly, like, you have to be invested, I think, into fire format to get good at the fire decks, right? The fire decks have a lot of nuance to it, I feel like, that even after looking at it for hours today, I don't think I'm going to be able to pilot a fire deck perfectly yet. It's going to take a while to get used to, right? And you need to be dedicated and willing to learn and put in the time to get good at fire format, right? And this deck is more simple than that. And I think that's a real reason for some people, because time is a valuable resource and not everyone wants to spend all the time on Yu-Gi-Oh, right? I genuinely think there were people in Tearlament format, they didn't play Flu because they hated Tearlaments or whatever. It was simply because Tearlament was freaking hard. What Flu was in Tearlament format, this deck is kind of that right now, because it's relatively simple. It's way easier to get into this deck than it is to get into the fire deck. So for what it's worth, I'm glad the deck exists. I'm glad it's an option. I think it's solid. We're gonna see just how solid it is in a little bit.